Winston Churchill's 3 words. Brevity in speech. Have you ever wondered why some speeches last only a few minutes, yet remain unforgettable for decades? Why do certain words, spoken with clarity and courage, echo across history while others fade into silence? Today, we step into one of those moments. A story of Winston Churchill, a man who carried the weight of a nation on his shoulders and showed the world that sometimes the most powerful message can be delivered in just 3 words. The year was 1941. The world was burning. Britain stood alone against the Nazi war machine. Cities lay in ruins from relentless bombing raids. Families huddled in underground shelters, uncertain if they would live to see the morning light. Fear was everywhere. In this time of despair, Winston Churchill became more than just a prime minister. He became a voice of hope. A man whose words carried the power to rally not just soldiers, but ordinary men, women, and children. Churchill knew one thing better than most: words can shape destiny. They can strengthen the weary, inspire the hopeless, and remind a nation that defeat is not an option. One day, Churchill was invited to give a speech at Harrow School, the very place where he himself had studied as a young boy. The students gathered with excitement, expecting a grand address from the great leader of their time. They imagined soaring words, long paragraphs, and pages of history. But Churchill had something very different in mind. He walked onto the stage, his presence alone commanding silence. The room grew still. Every eye fixed on him. They leaned forward, waiting for wisdom, for guidance, for something they could carry for the rest of their lives. And then, Churchill began. He looked at the students, paused, and said slowly, "Never give up." He paused again. The audience blinked, surprised by the brevity. Surely there must be more? Churchill then repeated, his voice stronger, heavier with conviction, "Never give up." A third time, with thunder in his tone, he declared, "Never give up." And then, he sat down. That was it. No long speech. No endless pages of rhetoric. Just 3 words. Yet those words carried more power than any hour-long lecture could have delivered. At first glance, 3 words may seem simple, even ordinary, but the genius of Churchill was not in complexity, it was in clarity and precision. He understood that in moments of crisis, people do not need long explanations. They need direction, hope, and certainty. Never give up was not just advice. It was a command to courage, a shield against despair, a spark to ignite action. Those words reminded the students, and indeed the entire nation, that resilience is born in the heart of simplicity. Churchill knew that brevity carries weight. Every word matters. Every pause builds anticipation. Every sentence leaves space for the listener's own mind to fill with conviction. His 3 words became a lighthouse in the storm, cutting through the noise of fear, doubt, and uncertainty. Imagine standing on that stage, facing a world in chaos. Imagine knowing that every second counts, every word matters. Churchill could have delivered a speech filled with statistics, war strategies, and political promises. But he didn't. Instead, he chose the essence of leadership, motivation distilled into a few syllables. And this is where the lesson becomes clear for each of us. In our own lives, whether at work, school, or within our families, how often do we overcomplicate our messages? How often do we drown in words, hoping that quantity will make our point heard? Churchill reminds us that true impact often lies in simplicity. One sentence can move mountains. One idea can inspire millions. One phrase can change a life. Think about it, Churchill faced the gravest threats of his time. Every decision carried the weight of thousands of lives. And yet, he trusted in the power of words. He knew that saying, "Never give up," was not empty rhetoric. It was a challenge to his listeners to rise, to stand firm, to fight even when hope seemed lost. Those 3 words were a seed planted in the minds and hearts of everyone who heard them. A seed that would grow into courage, determination, and unwavering resolve. Churchill's message is timeless because it speaks to the core of human strength, resilience. It reminds us that no matter how difficult the path, no matter how heavy the burden, our response matters more than the challenge itself. The echoes of Churchill's 3 words reached far beyond the walls of Harrow School. Across Britain, through radio broadcasts, speeches, and personal letters, "Never give up" became a mantra. Soldiers on the front lines repeated it to each other in the trenches. Families hiding in bomb shelters whispered it to keep their courage alive. Entire cities, battered and weary, found hope in those 3 simple words. Churchill's leadership was not only in strategy, planning, or diplomacy. It was in his ability to inspire action through words. Brevity became his ally, clarity his weapon, and courage his message. 3 words were enough to remind a nation that they could survive, endure, and triumph against overwhelming odds. Now, imagine applying this principle in your own life. How often do we overthink, overexplain, or overcomplicate? How often do we hesitate, fearing we don't have the perfect speech or the right words? Churchill teaches us that power is not in the length of your speech, but in the strength of your message. A few words, chosen carefully, can cut through doubt and fear, spark confidence, and ignite action. Ask yourself today, what is your 3 words moment? What simple, clear message can you deliver that inspires, motivates, and leaves a lasting impact? Winston Churchill's life reminds us that in moments of crisis, in moments of doubt, brevity is not weakness, it is strength. Clarity is not simplicity, it is power. And courage, even in 3 words, can move nations, hearts, and souls. So remember, when you feel overwhelmed, when the world seems heavy, when fear whispers in your ear, take a breath, focus your words, and say, "Never give up." Because sometimes, 3 words are all it takes to change everything. If this story inspired you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs motivation today. And if you want more powerful stories that will help you learn, aspire, master, reflect, and evolve, then subscribe to my channel. Thank you. See you next time.